Hi everyone and welcome back to our combat scenario tutorial series. In the last episode we got AI spawning in via spawner and opening a door. Now one thing we did do was we made the AI go towards a rally point, so as soon as they spawn in they will run towards a point and meet there. However, we're going to make this a bit more advanced and allow us to set multiple rally points, indicating that we want to anchor players not players but NPCs at certain locations. So let's take a look at how we achieve this. So here's where we got up to last time. We made it the spawn enemy come in and tell them to move towards this rally point. And the rally point was a point on our actual spawner. But what I actually want to do is I want to set up different rally points, multiple rally points in fact. So how do we determine what rally point we want them to actually go to? So what I'm going to do is I can make multiple rally points in here. But rather than using it as a component to get this location, we can use a variable. And the variable we're going to have here is going to be called rally points, the plural. And we have set to vector, instance editable, and make it an array. And on here, we're going to tick show 3D widget. This will make it so we can place these things a lot easier inside of our scene. Next, I'm going to go back to my event graph. And rather than using a rally point component, we're going to delete this. And instead, and also delete the component, we don't need it anymore. And instead, we're going to use the rally points array and get the first one of that array. So get a copy of 0.0. And we want to make sure that there's always a 0.0. We're going to add one set into there at 0, 0, 0. Now, the important thing to note about these points here is that 0, 0, 0 is actually a relative location. This requires a world location. So we can't just plug this straight into destination and expect the right outcome. So instead we have to transform this thing here. So transform, and you want to do transform location. That's going to translate from a local relative position to a world position. All we need to do is give it a transform here. So get actor transform. Follow that, and there you go. So 0, 0, 0 is the default starting point for my rally point, meaning it will just spawn on the spot and stay there. If I go back to the map here and go to my spawner, you'll see rally point 0 is actually a diamond shape now. And I can move this around freely wherever I want. So I can put this back down on the floor like we had the other one, like so, and hit play. And it should still work the same way as before. There you go. Okay, so that works. But as I said, I can add multiple rally points now because it's an array. So with my spawner, I'm going to go to rally points on the right hand side details panel, click on add, and you see rally points in brackets 1. I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to move this over to here. I can use this as reference points for any sort of behavior that I may want to use. So in this case, I want to tell one of my NPCs to run to this point instead. So one thing we need to do then is change which rally point the spawners are going to actually go to. So let's go to the spawner. And on the spawner, we need to break up this spawn enemy in here into two separate functions. One function is going to spawn the actual enemy, and the other function is going to be an event which will trigger the movement. So we're going to disconnect our AI move. And we're going to add an event to this. And we'll do start movement. And for start movement, we need to know which pawn is going to be moving. So the pawn will go to there. And we also need to know which rally point to use. So this 0 here will also go into our start point here. We'll just change the name of that to rally point index. Like that. Now we need to pass through this one, spawn enemy, as a function because we need to return which pawn is doing the thing. So we're going to right click on this spawn enemy, convert event to function, like that. And we can now find it in our function list on the left. Let's just tidy this up a little bit. And the thing I want to add on to here is the return node of this return value from the spawn actor. So let's add a return node. And I want it to return this pin here. Now, one thing I want to do as well is I actually want it to tell it to start moving straight away. Now, this is going to get quite messy with a load of lines everywhere. So one thing I am going to do is I'm just going to convert this return value into a local variable. We'll call it new pawn. That in. And instead, I'm just use that local variable instead to make it a little bit tidier. If I just plug that into there, I guess. And have less lines going absolutely everywhere. And before the return node, we do need to take the start movement. So let's drag in our start movement event. And we need to know what pawn, but we also need to know what rally point we want to go to. So for this, we're going to actually have this as a parameter on our spawn enemy. So let's go here, and we'll call it rally point index. Give it a integer. And compile that. So now I can get the rally point index from our function. Now, because we're sending that across, that will go into here, take the start movement, which will then go into here and get the rally point and find it and apply it to our AI move 2. So that's going to go back to my first person maps level blueprint, and you'll see in here on the for loop we can now insert the rally point index. And for default, we can leave it at 0, but there will be an occasion where we actually want one to actually go to the other rally point. So I'm going to say on do once, I want it to take the spawn, actually not return, do once there, so we'll do index here, and we'll just say if it is equal to, actually we'll do a switch, that'd be probably quicker. Switch on int, and by default it'll do this spawn enemy. If it is using 1 as index, we are going to use spawn enemy index 1. So it should only do it for the first one here. I can either do it on 1 or 0, either way. It just means that when the index comes through here, if it's 0, it will do this one. If it's 1, it will do nothing. Let's remove that. So if it's 1, it will do nothing and just go down to default and use the default one there. Okay. So that should do it for us. Let's take a look at the game now. So we should see them use different rally points at start. So probably didn't work because he probably just saw me. So we need to tell him not to come after me. So the way we're going to do that is to anchor it to that rally point. So to determine whether or not the enemy is anchored or not, we're going to use a blackboard value. So let's go to our blackboard, add a new vector. We'll call it anchor point. Save that. So now if I go back to behavior tree, I want to add a decorator to my move 2 here. This move 2 is going to move towards the target actor, i.e. the player, when it's set. But I don't want it to happen if they've been anchored. So go to add decorator, blackboard. I'm going to choose anchor point and change the key query to is not set. So if it has no anchor point set, it will do that move 2. Otherwise, it won't do anything. It will just stand at that rally point. So all we have to do now is tell it what the anchor point is. And I can do that on the level blueprint. Because we're getting this return value coming from our spawn enemy, it's going to rally point index 1, I can take this return value, get the AI controller, get the blackboard, and then tell it to set the value as vector. Key name, make literal name, correspond anchor point, And the vector value itself here, we can actually get from our spawn enemy if we wanted to as well. So I'm going to make that output on my spawn enemy. So go to return node and spawn enemy, add a vector point. So rally vector, and change that to a vector node. And the value vector here we'll just get from our rally points, get a copy of the rally point index and plug that in. Okay, very simple, just getting the point from the array. Go back to our level blueprint, and we can now see the rally vector coming through as part of the function. So I can drag that across and set the anchor point. So let's go ahead and push play now. Now you see we've got one enemy staying on top and one enemy chasing us. Excellent. So that once you've got the scenario set up, all you're doing is working a level blueprint to work out what the scenario should actually be. And it doesn't have to be just here with a switch, for example. You could do it a different way too. You can do it mathematically if you want. Or you can just say if the index here is equal to 0, do that, or false, do that. Like, this bit is totally up to you based upon how you want things to behave, like how many rally points you're going to have. You may want to do one rally point for each member you're spawning. In that case, make sure your spawner's got enough rally points for each member. Whatever you decide to do, you can do it all inside of here. So with that done, let's move on to the next bit, which is we want it to open another door over here when the combat is finished. So I'm just going to duplicate this door and move it into position like that. And I want it to do this door when the scenario is finished. And we've already got the combat scenario finished function in here. I'm just going to right click, create reference to BP door, and do open door. And all I've got to do now is determine that on my combat director, stage 1 is going to end after 5 seconds. Stage 2 is going to end when the body count is 0. So at the moment we've got that door closed. Kill this one. And this door is closed. These guys are going to come in. There you go. And that door is now going to open, allowing us to escape the combat scenario. So now you're starting to see how the combat scenario can really come together and make something really interesting. So in the next part, which is probably going to be the final part, we're going to do an extra thing on our combat scenario, which is going to be showing how to trigger something on the start of combat, and also trigger something like a cutscene or something to play, something more elaborate to play when a stage is ended. So you can watch the next part, the final part, over on patreon.com/Ryan Laley right now for just $1 a month. You get access to all our videos early before everyone else. A massive thank you to all the Patreon members and YouTube members for the continued support in the channel. If you like this content and want to see more, make sure you subscribe and hit the like button. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye, everyone.